That's the wrong page. That's the wrong page. That's the wrong page. That's the right page. Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the Morning Bible. We finally found the right page. We are today kicking off in Luke chapter 19. Brand new chapter, and with it brings some changes to sort of our established way of sort of going through the Bible. My methodology isn't changing, but sort of the book of Luke starts to change after this point. The events start to speed up and start to lead towards Jesus' death a lot more. So yeah, let's get into it. Chapter 19. Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through. So yesterday he drew near to Jericho. He was sort of around Jericho. In this passage he kicks off by going in. He found the blind man near to Jericho. So the blind man was outside the city limits, but now he is inside Jericho. And he was passing through. And behold, there was a man named Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector and was rich. And he was seeking to see who Jesus was. But on account of the crowd he could not, because he was small in stature. So he ran on ahead and climbed up into a sycamore tree to see him, for he was about to pass that way. So Zacchaeus is one of the classic characters you get in every sort of Christian children's Bible, where they just draw him as a really, really short dude. We don't know that Zacchaeus was super short, we just know that he was small enough that he couldn't see over the crowds. But yeah, everyone likes to draw him as sort of being this 3'2" kind of guy. So, who is Zacchaeus and what is Jericho? Well, I mentioned Jericho yesterday, saying that it is a place with a lot of history in the Bible, and that's true. But it's a place that's changed a lot from the Old Testament to the New Testament. So in the New Testament, Herod is now in charge of the overall region. We've mentioned Herod a few times before. And Herod's brought around a lot of changes in Jericho. He's constructed a lot of things. There's a new palace, there's new this, new that. He's built tons of stuff within the city, especially where the old city was, where there was a lot of history in the city. Herod rebuilt a lot of those parts to be more his era, more his kind of things that he wanted there. And so Jericho was in quite a tropical area. It was quite near a body of water. It was further south, which meant there was, good agriculture there. They had a lot of water, a lot of rainfall. And so good agriculture in this period definitely meant good economy. And also we have trade routes, tons and tons of trade routes that go straight through it. It's kind of a toll place where people will come in, rest there, pay a toll on their goods and continue on their way. So not only does Jericho have good agriculture, it also has very good trade. So it's quite a wealthy city, right? And so we have this guy Zacchaeus who lives there. Now Zacchaeus is a chief tax collector. We haven't come across a chief tax collector before, and there aren't actually any other mentions of chief tax collectors in the Old Testament, in the New Testament, apart from Zacchaeus. He's the only one. Everyone else is just a regular tax collector. And so that sort of shows that chief tax collector isn't just their boss or their manager. He is genuinely, legitimately quite wealthy and quite powerful. And the fact that he's living in Jericho as a chief tax collector shows that. This guy has a very affluent lifestyle. He's richer than we perhaps would just assume off the spot. He's actually, he's a big guy. He's a big guy. Well, he's also a little guy, but he's a big guy in terms of his bank account, little guy in height. But this guy wants to see Jesus. So we talked about tax collectors before, the level of corruption that went on, the fact that they sort of represented a government, a system that the people didn't like. It's kind of like if, I don't know, pick out your least favourite politician, the most corrupt politician or most corrupt, whoever in society, in our country or another one. That's sort of the kind of perception that people would have. This guy would have very, very low approval ratings. Everyone would dislike him. But he wants to see Jesus for some reason. It doesn't tell us why. The passage doesn't tell us what it is in his heart that's drawing him to Jesus, but this guy wants to see Jesus. And so in order to see him, he runs ahead where Jesus is going to go, and he climbs up into a tree to watch Jesus come. And so let's keep going. What happens then? So when Jesus came to the place, he looked up and said to him, "Zacchaeus, hurry and come down, for I must stay at your house today." So he hurried and came down and received him joyfully. And when they saw it, they all grumbled. He has gone in to be the guest of a man who is a sinner. So Jesus' response to seeing Zacchaeus in this tree is quite interesting. Firstly, he calls him out by name. Usually you will have a member of the crowd calling Jesus by name, which is what we saw last time with the blind man. He says, "Son of David, come and have mercy on me." This is a kind of flip around of that, where Jesus is the one who's calling out a person in the crowd. He's saying, "You, Zacchaeus." We don't know how Jesus knows his name, but Jesus knows his name. He calls him and he says, "Zacchaeus, I must stay at your house tonight." It isn't, "Do you have room in your house for me to stay, perhaps?" It isn't, any other way he could have phrased that. It's, "I must stay at your house." There's a necessity to what's going to happen, which is very interesting. Jesus is specifically picking this guy out. And so, why is that? Well, we'll see in a bit. But we see that Zacchaeus does it joyfully. He immediately hops out of the tree and he's like, "Yes, let's go, sweet." Very happy about that, which is strange, because you wouldn't peg Zacchaeus as being the kind to welcome Jesus into his life. If you think about the stereotypes surrounding Christianity today of these very perfect, charitable, goody two-shoes kind of people, essentially. You think about what society sees a Christian as being. Zacchaeus doesn't fit into that bubble in any way at all. Zacchaeus is the corrupt, politician, the corrupt government official, the corrupt person who's extorting tons of money and super, super rich and living in this gated community. That doesn't make sense for him being someone who would welcome Jesus into his life. But let's keep reading, because I think Jesus does that on purpose. And the crowd grumbled as well. So it isn't just sort of a modern perception of some people that would see Zacchaeus as not fitting into this crowd. This is something that the crowd there see as well. So Zacchaeus stood and said to the Lord, "Behold, Lord, the half of my goods I give to the poor, and if I have defrauded anyone of anything, I restore it fourfold." And Jesus said to him, "Today salvation has come to this house, since he is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and save the lost." So Zacchaeus does the step that Jesus challenges the rich man to earlier in the book of Luke, where he says it's harder for a camel to go through an eye of the needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. Zacchaeus puts his money where his mouth is, quite literally, and gives it away. All the people who he's defrauded, who he's exploited, he gives them back their money, which is a huge, huge gesture to make. But not only does he pay back all of the people who he's defrauded, he pays them back 4 times what he took from them. So we see this radical, abundant generosity here from Zacchaeus. It isn't, "Oh, I'll just pay them back, or just make myself square with them and then we'll be okay." It's, "I've done you wrong, so I'm going to bless you. I'm going to give you this abundance of good things." That's the kind of radical charity, radical generosity that Christians are called to. But he also gives away half of his own goods. He isn't just, "I'm going to pay away money that I owe officially to make things square." He gives away half of what he has. And he has quite a lot. So half of what he has is a huge, huge amount. Zacchaeus is very much a rich man. But in this moment, he shows that those riches don't matter to him compared to life with Jesus. He's happy to throw all of that away. Throw all of that out to people who need it more than him, because he recognizes who Jesus is and what his new purpose in life is. And that's something so, so powerful. And Jesus recognizes that as well. Jesus sees that radical generosity in him and says, "Today salvation has come to this house, since he also is a son of Abraham." So Jesus is saying, this is a guy who is descended from Abraham, just like all of you Jewish people who have been following me. This guy is of that same family. He is part of that family. And salvation has come to his house. He's been rescued, he's been saved because of the goodness in his heart. It's very easy to see the sort of charitable deed and see that as being the good thing that Zacchaeus does. But the real good thing that Zacchaeus does is inviting Jesus into his home, is joyfully receiving him. When Jesus calls his name when he's sat in the tree, Zacchaeus is excited, he's happy, he jumps down and goes to be with Jesus. That's what that shows the real goodness in his character, the real goodness of heart, because he has that faith and that love of Jesus ingrained in himself. And the passage just finishes off with Jesus saying, "For the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost." And so the lost aren't just the poor who are outside the town, the blind people, the disabled people, the people who have been suffering for years with whatever illness or demon or anything like that. Those aren't the only ones who are lost. Sometimes the people who are lost are in the biggest, nicest houses, who are making the biggest paychecks you've ever seen. Sometimes those people are the lost ones too. And so that's a big challenge for us of like, you know, reaching out to people looks like reaching out to people of all different spheres. It looks like reaching out to both people who are very much at the bottom of society, who are being sort of cast out and thrown away, but also the people who are at the top. And you'll find that by reaching out to the people at the top, if they have a change of heart like Zacchaeus does, that is a huge moment of radical change in that society, because there's money to be given away and there's good things to be done structurally and institutionally and all the rest of it. And so we're not limited to just reach one group or the other, we're called to reach everyone. And so that's where we're going to end it today. Thank you very much for watching. My throat is very drying out, so I'm going to have this coffee. I'll see you all tomorrow. Bye bye bye.